At exactly one moment in time, everything we thought we understood about the universe stopped making sense. Not slowly, not gradually, it snapped. At 8 on March 3, 2026, instruments at NASA's Goldstone Deep Space Communications Complex registered something that should not exist. A sudden, massive spike in radar cross-section from the interstellar object known as 3IATLAS. The probability of this being natural wasn't low, it was mathematically zero. In just 14 seconds, a mountain-sized object weighing over 33 billion tons didn't explode or crumble. It separated with intent. 50 pieces. Perfectly symmetrical. Each one stabilizing into rigid geometric precision that openly violated the laws of entropy. This wasn't fragmentation, it was division. The question stopped being what this object was made of. The real question became why 50 city block-sized fragments were now descending in coordination toward Earth's continents. In classical mechanics, fragmentation is chaos. We've seen it before. Shoemaker-Levy 9 broke apart under Jupiter's gravity, forming a messy string of debris governed by the Roche limit. When nature breaks something, it does so unevenly. You get randomness, different sizes, different speeds, a portrait of disorder. But 3IATLAS did the opposite. Instead of drifting apart, the fragments launched outward at high velocity, then instantly synchronized. Speeds matched, distances locked, positions stabilized. What the data showed next was deeply unsettling. These 50 objects weren't tumbling, they weren't drifting. They were flying in formation, holding a grid with millimeter-level accuracy while moving at nearly 100,000 miles per hour. Nature does not do this. Rocks do not organize themselves. There is no known natural mechanism that allows independent masses to behave as a single structure across interplanetary space. Theoretical models offer only one explanation. Each fragment must be actively controlled. Propulsion, guidance, communication, and not radio communication, something far more advanced. Quantum entanglement. In quantum physics, entangled particles share information instantly, regardless of distance. Apply that concept at scale, and you get something unprecedented. 50 separate objects, acting as one coherent system. Through this lens, we aren't looking at debris, we are looking at a distributed organism. If we apply the Kaku scale, this behavior aligns with a Type 2 civilization, a civilization capable of harnessing the energy of an entire star, manipulating space-time itself. As the formation crossed the 240 million kilometer mark, another impossibility appeared. The James Webb Space Telescope confirmed that all 50 fragments were identical. Same mass, same shape, same thermal profile. Natural fragmentation doesn't do that. Physics predicts a power law distribution, a few large pieces and countless smaller ones. Identical clones imply manufacturing, not geology. And then came the silence. No heat, no exhaust, no radiation trail. According to every rule of orbital mechanics, changing trajectory requires force, and force produces waste energy. Yet observatories detected nothing. No thermal plume, no ionized gas. The objects were maneuvering without heat. The only theories that fit involve magnetic sailing or gravitational field manipulation interacting directly with the sun's magnetic lines or the fabric of spacetime itself. These objects weren't flying, they were surfing reality. And as they adjusted course, Goldstone radar logged the most disturbing signal yet. Each fragment began emitting a low-frequency gravitational ripple. Not the kind produced by black holes or neutron star collisions, but detectable nonetheless. That shouldn't be possible. For something this small to bend spacetime, its density would need to exceed anything made of ordinary matter, which means these fragments aren't hollow rocks. They're anchors, and they're aimed at us. By the time the formation crossed the Martian orbital threshold, the global scientific community understood one thing clearly: this was not a flyby, it was an arrival. Each of the 50 fragments maintained perfect spacing, locked into formation with a precision that suggested they weren't just resisting gravity, they were integrated into it. The gravitational ripples detected earlier weren't random. They were controlled, deliberate, and synchronized. Theoretical physics offers a disturbing possibility. These objects may be composed of degenerate matter or a stable form of metallic hydrogen, materials dense enough to exert powerful gravitational influence while remaining structurally intact. That would explain how they could stabilize themselves in space without thrust. They weren't pushing against the universe, they were embedding into it. Confirmation came when trajectory data was finalized. The fragments weren't converging on one impact site, they were spreading out, fanning across the planet with flawless symmetry, one toward North America, one toward South America, Europe, Africa, Asia, Australia, Antarctica, every major continental mass, every tectonic plate. The odds of this happening by chance are effectively zero. In probability terms, it's 1 in several trillion. This wasn't random distribution, it was targeting. From a strategic standpoint, it matches a Type 3 civilization playbook. You don't conquer a planet by landing in one place. You occupy everything at once. You remove the idea of a front line. You make resistance meaningless before it begins. Then came the transmission. Just before the original object divided, a single high bandwidth burst was detected. It wasn't aimed at satellites. It wasn't aimed at Earth's communication networks. It was aimed at one place only, the Ice Cube Neutrino Observatory in Antarctica. Neutrinos are ghost particles. They pass through planets without interacting. They cannot be blocked, jammed, or intercepted. If you want to speak across interstellar distances without interference, neutrinos are the perfect medium. By targeting Ice Cube, 3IATLAS bypassed our technology entirely. It spoke directly to our instruments, not to communicate but to observe, to blind our eyes while it positioned its limbs. As the 50 clones accelerated, the formation remained flawless. Speed increased, distance closed, still no heat, still no exhaust. The silence wasn't passive, it was intentional. This wasn't an anomaly anymore. It was a forensic event. A controlled, organized, interstellar maneuver. With 64 hours remaining before atmospheric contact, governments went into emergency mode, data streams flooded in, and one conclusion became unavoidable. The space we thought was empty, what string theory describes as higher dimensional hyperspace, was not empty at all, it was active, and it was unfolding around us. To understand why this event shattered physics, we have to return to the second law of thermodynamics. Entropy always increases, order breaks down, systems decay. That's not philosophy, it's the backbone of modern science. And yet these objects were doing the opposite. They weren't becoming more disordered. They were becoming more precise. James Webb confirmed another anomaly. The surface temperature of each fragment was dropping below the background radiation of space, colder than the void itself. In cryogenics, achieving temperatures near absolute zero requires enormous energy input. An icy rock cannot do that, especially not while accelerating. The only theoretical explanation is entropic inversion, a propulsion system that extracts heat and converts it directly into motion with near-perfect efficiency. No waste, no signature. In classical physics, such a system is impossible. But if a civilization can tap vacuum energy, zero-point fluctuations of space-time itself, then acceleration without heat becomes feasible. These objects were not moving through space. They were riding the quantum foam, and Earth was their destination. As the formation closed in, geometry itself became the next puzzle. In classical mechanics, any multibody system is unstable. The n-body problem ensures chaos. The gravitational tug-of-war between the Sun, Earth, Moon, and planets should tear any rigid formation apart. To maintain a 50-point grid across millions of miles would require constant visible thrust corrections. Yet ESA's Gaia mission detected nothing. No chemical residue, no ion trails, no reaction mass. Instead, the fragments appeared locked together by something unseen, a synthetic gravity well, a gravitational tiling pattern that bound them into a single structure, not 50 probes but one distributed instrument. Then came atmospheric contact. As the first 10 fragments reached the upper exosphere over the Pacific, physics should have taken over. Hypersonic entry creates plasma, superheated ionized gas, shock waves, sonic booms, blackouts. But none of that happened. Chandra's X-ray sensors recorded laminar flow, smooth, controlled, silent. The air wasn't being displaced violently, it was being held aside. Theoretical models point to a Misner effect shield, a localized magnetic field so intense it repels atmospheric particles entirely. The fragments weren't burning through the atmosphere. They were excluding it. No heat trail, no sound, no warning. This wasn't entry. It was insertion. And the question that echoed through every research facility was simple: why 50? The answer lay beneath our feet. Each fragment aligned itself above a major tectonic junction points where Earth's crustal plates meet. From a geophysical perspective, these are the planet's pressure valves. A city block-sized object exerting controlled gravitational force at those locations could, in theory, trigger or suppress seismic activity globally: earthquakes, volcanoes, plate shifts, climate effects. This wasn't a weapon aimed at cities. It was a system aimed at the planet itself. As the clones settled into position, IceCube registered a shift. The neutrino pulses changed pattern. They were no longer counting down, they were mapping tomography. A full scan of Earth's interior, rendering our planet transparent. The message was no longer coming from space. It was coming from the atmosphere, and what it was saying was clear. We were being measured. At 22 UTC, the transformation was complete. The 50 fragments were no longer interstellar visitors. They were an atmospheric array. But the data showed something even more unsettling. This wasn't a landing, it was a coupling. At 2145, IceCube detected a neutrino surge unlike anything recorded before. The signal wasn't arriving from above, it was passing through the Earth itself, straight through the core. In geophysics, we know the core generates Earth's magnetic field. It's the engine that shields life from solar radiation. The clones were pinging it. Using neutrino tomography, they were mapping the core with precision beyond our best seismic instruments. Through the Kaku lens, this is advanced sentinel behavior. A Type 2 civilization doesn't invade with armies. It adjusts constants: gravity, magnetism, energy flow. The clones stabilized at exactly 100 kilometers altitude. The Kármán line, the edge of space, high enough to avoid atmospheric drag, low enough to interact with the ionosphere. And by coupling with the ionosphere, they turned the entire atmosphere into a planetary antenna. Earth became a circuit. Emergency briefings stalled when the next revelation emerged. Each clone was anchored above a fault line. Quantum vacuum thrusters held them in place without fuel, exerting continuous microgravitational pressure on the crust below. Alone, the force was negligible. Together, synchronized, it was planetary. Then the pulses stopped. The countdown signals vanished. In their place came a continuous hum, a frequency, 7.83 Hz. The Schumann resonance, Earth's natural electromagnetic heartbeat. Phase lock. 3IATLAS wasn't broadcasting anymore. It was listening. The moment the signal locked into Earth's natural frequency, the nature of the event changed forever. This was no longer an approach, a scan, or even an occupation of space above the planet. It became synchronization. When the 50 objects matched the Schumann resonance at 7.83 Hz, they didn't just detect Earth's electromagnetic heartbeat, they joined it. In physics, resonance is not passive. When two systems vibrate at the same frequency, energy transfers efficiently, sometimes catastrophically. Bridges collapse, structures fail, waves amplify. What happens when an entire planet is brought into resonance with an external intelligence? From this point forward, the clones were no longer behaving like machines acting upon Earth. They were behaving like extensions of Earth's own systems. The ionosphere responded first. Global monitoring stations detected subtle but coherent shifts in electromagnetic circulation patterns. Lightning activity redistributed. Auroral bands intensified in unnatural symmetry. None of this caused immediate damage, but the precision was unmistakable. These weren't side effects, they were calibrations. In theoretical physics, this level of interaction implies access to vacuum energy and higher dimensional control fields. By phase locking with Earth, the clones reduced the energy required to influence planetary scale systems to nearly zero. They no longer needed force. They needed timing. This is the difference between pushing a swing and pushing it at exactly the right moment. Minimal input, maximum control. The most disturbing realization followed quickly. Once synchronized, the neutrino emissions intensified not outward but inward. The scans were no longer focused on mapping the planet. They were refining it. High-resolution tomography of the mantle, the outer core, the inner core, stress lines, energy reservoirs, fault tensions measured down to the molecular level. The planet wasn't just being observed, it was being modeled in real time. From a strategic perspective, this represents total informational dominance. Any civilization capable of reading a planet's internal state can predict earthquakes before they happen, redirect volcanic pressure, or suppress tectonic release entirely. Climate, magnetism, even biological evolution become variables in a controlled system. Control doesn't require destruction. It requires understanding. This is where scientific debate fractured. One faction argued this was a stabilizing system, a planetary regulator designed to prevent extinction-level events. A cosmic insurance policy imposed by a higher intelligence. Another faction saw something far darker. A muzzle, a leash, a way to ensure a developing species never becomes unpredictable. Because once a planet is phase-locked, resistance becomes meaningless. Any attempt to disrupt the system would be detected instantly. Any large-scale technological activity, nuclear tests, energy surges, orbital launches would ripple through the resonance field like a shout in a silent room. And yet, there was no overt hostility, no ultimatum, no message in human language. That silence may be the most chilling element of all. In advanced systems theory, silence often means the system is operating exactly as intended. There is nothing to correct, nothing to negotiate. Humanity wasn't being contacted. It was being classified. The final confirmation came when deep space instruments detected a stabilization ripple extending beyond Earth's magnetosphere. The clones weren't just synchronized with the planet. They were broadcasting that synchronization outward, like a signature. A flag planted not on land, but in space-time itself. Whatever 3IATLAS is, it has completed its primary task. Earth is no longer an independent node drifting unnoticed through the cosmos. It is now a monitored system, phase-locked, mapped, and understood at a level we are barely capable of comprehending. and as scientists struggled to interpret the implications, one truth settled in with absolute clarity. This was never about arrival. It was about integration. Integration changes everything, because once a system is integrated, it no longer needs constant attention. It runs. That realization hit the global scientific community almost simultaneously. The 50 clones were no longer adjusting position, frequency, or output. They were stable, perfectly still relative to the planet below, yet dynamically active within layers of physics we can barely observe. In control theory, this state is known as equilibrium, not inactivity, but balance. The kind that only exists when a system has achieved its intended configuration. At that moment, emergency briefings across the world stalled not because of panic, but because there was nothing left to respond to. No invasion to repel, no signal to decode, no countdown to interrupt. The objects above Earth were not escalating. They had finished. And that completion was the most unsettling outcome imaginable. Data from neutrino detectors, magnetometers, and gravitational sensors began to converge on the same conclusion. The clones were no longer scanning for information, they were maintaining coherence. The planet's electromagnetic field stabilized into an unusually uniform pattern. Minor tectonic noise dropped worldwide. Microseismic activity decreased, not increased. Earth, for the first time in recorded history, appeared quieter. This forced a re-evaluation of intent. If the system was hostile, why reduce instability? Why suppress random energy release? Why reinforce the very mechanisms that allow life to persist? Some researchers proposed that Earth had crossed a threshold, technological, biological, or energetic, that triggered automatic intervention, not conquest, but containment. A way to prevent a developing civilization from self-destructing before it reaches a higher stage of maturity. Others rejected that interpretation entirely. Stabilization, they argued, is not benevolence. It is control. A forest preserved under glass is still a prison. A species prevented from making catastrophic mistakes may also be prevented from making necessary ones. Evolution, after all, thrives on chaos. Remove it completely, and progress slows to a crawl. The most sobering theory emerged from long-range simulations. Once a planet is integrated into a higher-order monitoring system, it rarely exits on its own terms. The system doesn't leave. It waits. It observes. It nudges. And when the species below reaches the next critical threshold, interstellar capability, artificial superintelligence, large-scale spacetime manipulation, the system responds again, not as a warning, but as a filter. There was no message because none was required. The geometry in the sky was the statement. The resonance lock was the language. Humanity had been acknowledged, not welcomed, registered, not contacted. And yet one final anomaly refused to fit the darker interpretations. Deep within the neutrino noise, researchers detected a faint repeating pattern, not a transmission, but a reflection, a mirror. The system wasn't projecting intent onto Earth. It was responding to Earth's own signals, amplified and stabilized. In a sense, humanity had called this system into place through its growing energy footprint, its expanding technological reach. If that is true, then the arrival of 3IATLAS is not the end of an era, but the end of anonymity. The universe did not suddenly notice us. We finally became loud enough to be heard. The 50 clones remain invisible to the naked eye, silent to conventional instruments, and ever present in the layers of physics beneath reality. Life continues. Cities stand, oceans move. But the context has changed. Every experiment, every launch, every global decision now unfolds under observation. The symphony has not ended. It has only resolved its opening chord. If you want to understand what this means for humanity's future, how close we may be to the next threshold, and what signs to watch for as this system continues to operate. Stay connected. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with anyone who still believes the universe isn't paying attention. Because whatever comes next, we're no longer facing it alone, and we're no longer unseen.